Everybody else is ready. Good evening and welcome to we'll call this meeting into order. It is now 7:04 on March 6, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland's Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Reporting and Transparency. If the Spanish language interpreters Thalia and Maria can please give the information in Spanish language interpretation. Thank you. We cannot hear you if you are speaking. I see Thalia, you're on mute. You unmuted. Okay. Oh,
I think they're already in
the Spanish channel. Yeah, I just caught that. Okay.
Someone started it early.
Is there a way to have them pop out? Or are they just in there?
I think they are just in there.
No, if you stop interpretation in the menu, then it'll let them come out and enter.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I'm so sorry, yeah, I was on the channel already. Muy buenas noches a todos. Vamos a empezar esta reunión, son las 7:04 de la noche y hoy día es el día 6 de marzo del 2023. Esta es una reunión pública de la ciudad de Portland, de los subcomisionados. Esta reunión es grabada y vamos a tener disponibilidad en español, la interpretación.
Thank you. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Mary and Dana. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. Please note that this is an automatic captioning service and is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meetings notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation in other language. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland's administrative code and Oregon state law, and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commissioner members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to use Q&A feature as commissioners are presenting and discussing things. If attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meetings and future meetings, agendas, and topics. We like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A feature or Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. Now I'd like to pass it on to our co-chairs for the land acknowledgement.
Good evening. My name is Connie Wan. I use she, her pronouns, and I will deliver the land acknowledgement. The PAC currently uses the land acknowledgement on display at City Hall, which is, we acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize that these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and the land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enable the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of the past, socioeconomic policies, and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters. And with that, I will pass it back to our facilitator.
Thank you, Commissioner Connie. So please take a moment to read the first portion of our community agreements. And we can go to the next slide, please. With a show of hands, do we all commit to the following community agreements for today's meeting and gently call in our colleagues and collaborators if needed? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, I'm going to pass it back over to the co-chairs to discuss today's timeline.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Ayumide. I'm Debbie Iona. I'm one of the co-chairs of the commission, she, her pronouns. So next we're going to talk about hold on, I got to find out where I am here. The timeline. So this meeting is part of the Police Accountability Commission structure and details phase of work, which focuses on the form of the new system. Future phases of work will develop how the new system relates to the rest of the city government and the transition plan from our current system to the new one. The commission will present all proposed changes to the city council later in 2023 for their consideration and approval. And then the next slide shows the outcome documents for the structure and details phase, based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. This subcommittee focuses on how the new oversight board and agency will ensure the public and city council are aware of what the new system is doing, including reporting and transparency requirements. And then the next slide is the current project plan for the structure and details phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It will be updated as needed throughout this phase of work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to the form the new system will take. Today's meeting is part of the gold box with the red border near the bottom left of the screen. And then following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the PAC. We'd like to highlight this subcommittee will meet March 16th and 23rd, both at 6:30 p.m. If necessary, we'll meet again on March 25th. The next full commission meeting is Thursday, March 30th. There is an open PAC community listening session and Q&A on Wednesday, March 22nd, excuse me. And then I think I'm going to hand it back to my co-chair.
Hi, thank you, Debbie. I think maybe the facilitator. Okay, so today's meeting agenda includes a framing discussion on the values surrounding transparency reporting. The agenda has time for subcommittee members to talk about what they've been working on over the last week. There will be discussion on what should end up in the eventual areas of agreement on reporting and transparency. There will also be public comment, as well as time for the subcommittee to plan out its work from now through next Thursday's meeting. Today, we're going to have a discussion. We're going to start today's meeting with a framing discussion about the principles on reporting and transparency. And now with that, I'll pass it back to our facilitator.
Thank you, Commissioner Connie. We will now move into the framing discussion on transparency and reporting. This is an open discussion and is designed to talk about the big picture before getting into the details of the text of the document. We ask you to follow normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated, and remember, I will be using a weighted stack in our discussion. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments, and we'd like to have the co-chairs start the discussion. So, who would like to go first? Possibly Connie?
I'll go first.
Connie? Thank you.
So in our initial meeting, we had kind of just jumped right into some details, and we're going line by line and looking at what past sort of rhetoric and things have presented in the scope of transparency and reporting. And with my co-chairs and the facilitators and our PAC support staff, we kind of realized that we needed to zoom out a little bit and have a bit more of a bigger conversation about why transparency and reporting is important. So what we'd like to do is just kind of open up the floor and maybe even have just, raise your hand if you want to speak. But I think, the talking points, and our PAC staff is going to put up some values and things that we can reflect upon in this conversation. But we really want to sort of ask ourselves, like, why is transparency important? What parts of the work that we are trying to advise people on should be framed with transparency? And what does transparency actually mean? How do we achieve actual transparency? And then obviously that leads to how the reporting is communicated. So with that, I think I can open it up. I mean, if Debbie wants to start as my co-chair, or if there's anyone else that wants to raise their hand and just simply kind of broad brushstrokes speak about what transparency means and why in this process it would be important.
Well, I'd be happy to start as your co-chair. I remember when Eileen Luna Firebog did her assessment of the independent police review, and the beginning of that report kind of talks about why is it important to have police accountability in your community. And one of the things that she talked about was it was important for any system to be transparent, because the public has the right to know the public's business. And that to me is sort of the fundamental underpinning behind the idea of transparency. I mean, this is our city, our police bureau, our accountability system, and we need to know what's going on. And so the city should be as forthcoming as possible to make all of that information readily available to all of us. So that's let's get the ball rolling here.
Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair Iona. Anybody else would like to? Commissioner Faith?
Hi, good evening. I'm Faith Bacon. I use she, her pronouns. Yeah, I appreciate kind of the step back to look at values of why it's important. I mean, I think it's the community has the right to know, and I think Debbie, you framed that well. And I'm just thinking about at one of our community engagement sessions in person, there is some critique of a potential oversight system, and I think it seems so important that we are accountable. Well, I'm a city employee, so I'm saying we as a capital C city are accountable to taxpayers. And so for Portland Police, I've actually been looking at their data on their open data site, and you can see so much, and you can see officer involved shootings, and you can see dispatch calls, and you can see all sorts of like pretty detailed data around what's available, like overtime dashboard, bias crimes, but there's no mention of accountability or what it looks like to really have I don't even want to say process improvement, but it's not mentioned anywhere. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to make that more apparent. And I know Debbie, in the research subcommittee so many months ago, you guys looked at a bunch of reports, but I've been looking at Seattle's annual report, and it is really thorough. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of other cities doing a good job reporting on accountability and oversight that we can replicate.
Thank you. Commissioner Christian?
Thank you. Yeah, I think also to add on to all that, we've also been hearing quite a bit that there's a lot of lack of trust in the way the system is right now. I think transparency helps a little bit with that as well, because people who are in the community can kind of feel like they can at least have the option to know what's going on, and things aren't being hidden behind closed doors, which obviously how can you trust anything if you can't see it, you know, or know about it? Yeah, that's just a little bit I would add to the conversation.
Thank you. Commissioner McDowell, I saw your hand up as well.
I think I'm going to echo in a different way what Christian just said, which is that I think that in addition to it being the public's right to know, I think that the public cannot assess whether people are being held accountable if they don't know the details of the situation and the consequences that were imposed upon somebody. So with the system, it's possible the system might work in darkness, but no one would ever know that unless the details of the system are made available to the public. So that's, I guess, a connection to the trust piece, but it's also a way of sort of holding our accountability system accountable. That can't happen unless people understand what's going on. And I think our current system is really lacking in that respect. It's a major barrier of our current system.
Thank you, Commissioner McDowell. Anybody else would like to speak on this subject? Commissioner Co-Chair Connie?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I felt it was important to have this conversation was that it is very important to build the community trust. Without the transparency, there is not that opportunity. So to echo my fellow commissioners, and I think if we look at the lack of transparency that has existed, that is even why voters have voted to have this commission created. So the desire and sort of the respectability to our fellow community to be able to, create this conversation for transparency and reporting and accountability is, I think paramount in being able to rebuild the trust with the community and even just show community actual care, that because when there is transparency and accountability, then I think maybe certain behaviors may not be as acceptable or feel like they're going to pass through without the fact of accountability and transparency. So yeah, I think it is foundational to what we are doing here and like what we're trying to accomplish with achieving some accountability.
Co-Chair Commissioner Iona?
Yeah, and I think it's encouraging that in the earlier phases, how the way we've sort of gotten a good start on designing the system. I think we've injected the whole idea of the things that our new accountability system will do. will primarily be out in the open so that interested community members can come and watch an evidentiary hearing or an appeal, which, I mean, now we can watch an appeal under our current system, but this is going to be even more transparent, assuming we end up with what the group is proposing.
Thank you. Commissioner Christian?
Thank you. Conversation 2 made me think about Commissioner Aiken's point as well about process. I feel like transparency is such an important first step towards being able to improve whatever system you're talking about, because it's a really important way that community members can engage with the system in the first place, and there can't be any improvement if people can't engage in the system or don't know what's going on. So I feel like it's not just a important like right and to build trust, it's also like to continue to be able to make things better. Because yeah, like people have been saying, in the dark nothing can get better because no one knows what's going on. But if it's all in the light, then we can actually talk about it. Even if it's not working, if people can see that it's not working, then at least they can talk about it and be like, see, look, it's not working, as opposed to just feeling really in the dark and really upset all the time and not being able to point to anything to show that it's not working. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Iona?
One thing that came up at the status conference that is sort of interesting, the Department of Justice's evaluation of where the city is right now. Once again, they brought up the problems with the Police Review Board. And you know how they also have that OIR group that looks at closed cases of shootings and deaths in custody. They keep pointing out problems with the Police Review Board, but none of us can see what's going on at those because they're, because they're behind closed doors. So kind of to kind of reinforce Commissioner Christian's comment about if you see something as a member of the public, it provides the opportunity for you to propose improvements and hope. And if there's enough of that, maybe then you finally move the dial on it. So, but the Police Review Board problems have been going on for quite a long time, and I don't, who knows what it'll take to get to fix them, but we don't really even know what they are exactly.
Thank you, Commissioner Iona. Any other comments? Oh, Commissioner McDowell?
Yeah, just to sort of go down one level as well, when we were talking about the officer accountability system, I think we led with the idea of as much transparency and openness as possible, but there were a few times, I mean, I think this is just how life is. There were some nuances where we felt like transparency in general was both fair to the public and provided the most fairness to the individuals involved in the complaint process, both the complainant and the officer who was the subject of the complaint. That the more information each of those participants had, the more empowered they would be in the process. So information is power, and I think dissemination of information often levels power dynamics. So we thought a lot about that, but there were some times where we felt like, and I think we'll just have to be mindful of this in our work too. There were some times where we felt like too much disclosure could actually prejudice the complainant or the officer in particular situations. I think one example was, if the complainant is talking about the situation they were in, and in the process of doing that, they might be talking about some issue that is tangential, but potentially, something that the police might want to investigate, that if that is disclosed, that, collateral tangential issue, if that get disclosed, that could precipitate some kind of retaliatory investigation of the complainant. So those were the situations where we did try to think about where is confidentiality important to protect people, because I think there are limited situations we identified in our process where it was important. But I do think we led with the idea that in terms of not, beyond just fairness and transparency and doing our duty to the public, there were also times where we felt like, there was also the the theme that transparency was also the most fair way for the litigants, both the complainant and the officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDowell. Any other comments? Okay. Then we'll move on to the next section of our agenda. Member reports. So this is the time where you guys can, the commission can report back some of the things that they worked on during their break last week. I know there was a few things that the co-chairs were going to work on before we came back together again today. So co-chair Iona, would you like to elaborate?
So I think probably most of us have heard of this book that the NACOL and the Department of Justice did about, I can never remember the title of it, it's about civilian oversight of law enforcement or something like that. That's what it is. And so I looked at it, and it's a great book. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it just lays out all the different things to consider for, when you're designing an oversight system. But they had some sections on public reporting and transparency. So I just wanted you to know, and I emailed it to you all on Saturday. Just wanted you to know that it's there in your inbox, and it's just like 2-3 pages. It's not that long, but and then I kind of highlighted the sentences that seem the most relevant to our work. So you can file that in the back of your mind, and we'll talk about it more at a later date. Thank you. And Commissioner Faith did some work over the weekend also.
Yeah. So we had talked about what would be, we noticed that in Seattle, they have required contents of agency and commission annual reports, which are defined in code. So we wanted to see which elements we would perhaps recommend defining in code. So I, thank you, Debbie. I pulled from the League of Women Voters did a memo comparing IPR's annual report from 2004 versus 2014. And their recommendations were to model similarly to 2004, which is wild, 20 years ago. And these, you can see here on the screen, these are the sections that were included that were recommended as best practice. And then I mentioned the Seattle Office of Police Accountability. I looked through their 2021 annual report, and I just copied from the table of contents kind of the sections that they had. I found their report really easy to read, and I thought that the sections that they utilized were really great. So about the office, so like generally what their mission and values were, summary of complaints, broken down by multiple demographics, by location, et cetera. Investigations, so what actually happened in the investigations and the timeliness, findings or overturned findings, what discipline was imposed, and then any updates to policy or programs throughout the year, and then finally other functions of the oversight agency. So ways that they engaged with the community or engaged with Seattle PD, and disclosure of bias reviews. And then thank you to Debbie. She forwarded me the Eileen Luna Firebar report. And I mean, in general, it's a great read. So I just highlighted the areas to me that I think I would recommend to include in annual reporting. Yeah, I don't know if any other members of the research subcommittee had thoughts on annual reports that they reviewed back from way back when, but I just initially looked at Seattle. I don't know if anyone had any others that they were like, oh, this is a real standout. That was it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Any other reports or updates from any other members? Oh, I'll do Commissioner McDowell and then Commissioner Christian.
Yeah, I just had a question, and maybe I should know the answer to this, but did we look at what IPR's current report is and compare it to these reports, or is that work that still needs to be done?
I see
Still
Commissioner.
needs to be done.
Okay.
Commissioner Christian.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I also I didn't condense it into, I did a quick reading of the NACOL civilian book, like Commissioner Iona, Co-Chair Iona, and I skimmed through the document you sent, and I think I highlighted a lot of the same stuff as you. But if I have anything to add while we go through that, I'll let you know if I see anything that's not in yours. I didn't do a fancy document or anything. I just have it in my notes.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll now move on into discussing the content of members would like to include in the draft agreements, areas of agreement, and reporting of and transparency, which is the document this subcommittee will be developing and referring to the full commission. Pardon me, I have a cold. I have a little bit of sniffles, so forgive me. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules again. Please be brief each time you speak. Even though you can speak multiple times, please be facilitated. Remember, I use a weighted stack in our discussion. And finally, please be forward-thinking in your comments. And I will again pass it to the co-chairs to frame the discussion. Thank you. Oh, staff.
Yeah, just a quick note, I'll pass it back to co-chairs, but we got through about half of this document, but it wasn't straight top to bottom. So we'll be jumping around a little bit. This document is available on the website and you can look it up. We'll be doing the remaining portion of the subject matter experts section before hopping back up to the barriers and best practices section.
Thank you, staff. I will pass it back to one of the co-chairs.
So, I just want to make sure, Samir, so right now we've already looked at, whoops. Yeah, so take us to where we are.
Yeah, we've done independent police review code, and this is the portion of that relates to the citizen review committee intake on reporting. We didn't do this part, and we'll get to this in a moment, which is the PAC's areas of agreement on barriers and best practices, police accountability. We are part of the way through subject matter experts, so we're going to come back to B1. That's our point. But just to quickly note, we did do the practices from other jurisdictions, which is the next section, and which goes quite a ways down the document. So we'll start at B1 here, and under subject matter experts, and then move up to the section above it after that.
Okay, I can start, Commissioner Co-Chair Connie, and then hand it over to you next. So, Samir, since there's some purple right there, does that mean we already read that paragraph? Or, oh, sorry, B1, good.
Right.
The oversight body should present annual reports to City Council each year. Say we kind of agreed on that. And then, and Eileen Luna Firebaugh proposes that annual reports from the oversight body be presented to City Council. Public reporting on oversight helps keeps elected leaders and community members informed on an ongoing basis. Then Connie, do you want to do B2?
Sure.
Oh, do we, I mean, I'm assuming people, I shouldn't assume anything. Do people pretty much agree that they should be presenting annual reports to City Council?
I see lots of waving of hands and thumbs up, so I think you can move on, Commissioner.
Okay, good. And then Commissioner
There,
Connie, do you want to do B2?
sorry, Commissioner Iona, there is an actual hand raised by Commissioner.
Oh, good.
I just wanted to say that I think that maybe we should put something like sort of at least annual reports. I just quickly looked up IPR, and in the code, the city code requires twice annual reports, so biannual reports. And I would think we would want to yeah, I think we would want to do at least as much reporting as IPR currently does. So that's, I guess I just want to throw that out. Thank you.
And when we get to the NACOL thing, their advice is minimum annual reports, but they encourage, more frequent. And one thing to keep in mind too, IPR does these quarterly reports. They're very short. And then, but the director gives a report at every CRC meeting also. So, and they're not that long anyway, but it keeps you up to date on what's going on. So, yeah, so we shouldn't, I agree with you, Commissioner McDowell, that, yeah, we shouldn't limit it to annual reports. When we get into kind of our final thing, maybe we should kind of decide, like, what do we want to require as far as, what do we want to see in the code that is the bare minimum or the minimum? And then hopefully the oversight agency will, will err on the side of extra reporting. So, okay, so Co-Chair Connie, do you want to carry on?
B2, the statistical definition of sustain rate. An oversight agency reports should be sustained complaints out of all complaints received, not just those investigated. As proposed by Eileen Luna Firebaugh.
Any questions or comments, or can I see hands in agreement on what is written? Oh, I see staff hand.
Yeah, so just as a reminder of what this particular discussion and exercise is, it's a question of what should be put into the recommendations of the PAC, which are code. As some we've discussed in a couple other places, but maybe not yet in this subcommittee, there are items which are under administrative rules or other documentation which that are going to be developed by either the oversight board itself once it is seated, or by the staff who will ultimately report to the oversight board. Those policy documents that begin with PSF are issued by the bureau directors, and the staff director of the oversight board will be a bureau director under the charter. So it is a question for you as you go through this exercise to determine with the more detailed items, is this something that you'd like to elevate to code or be deferential to the oversight board itself in navigating the specifics. Just wanted to flag that in here, and this is something that certainly falls into that category of things to consider that way.
Thank you, staff. Commissioner Iona.
I do think, right, this, I don't know, this seems like maybe it's not something that needs to be in code, but I think it's worth saving as an idea for, I don't know if we're going to, are we going to, or is the plan to have recommendations besides the stuff that we are saying, this is what belongs in the code? I know we're doing things, we're going to have a thing about more things that would be good to do, but are we going to have a document that also, will the document also include, these are things to put into, for the agency to put in their administrative rules? Are we going to offer that kind of advice as we finish our big project here? And maybe staff, the answer to that.
Go ahead, staff.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of interest from the commission to do that, and certainly staff will contribute to assisting in that process and maybe having some sort of transition materials to hand off. The only thing that is unclear is the timeline and whether or not there is enough time for the commission to really get into that sort of thing. As the public knows and as the commissioners know, the commission has requested that the council allow them to work until the settlement agreement deadline of October 29th. And so if additional time anywhere between now and then would allow for something like that, then certainly staff would support that if there's enough time to do it. But yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we can go, maybe we can make a note. Oh, you already did put a note there. Okay, good. So then transparency and public access, that's the next section. I1, all meetings and reports should be public and all operations should be transparent. Proposed by Nicole and Eileen Luna Firebaugh. Nicole defines civilian oversight of law enforcement as a public-facing process and proposes that all efforts should be made by the locality as well as the state legislature to ensure that policing matters are able to be discussed in public settings and all reports are made public. Eileen Luna Firebaugh in her 2008 assessment of IPR promotes transparency as well, saying that transparency is about the public's right to know the public's business. Any thoughts on whether this should be included in our areas of agreement at the end of our reporting and transparency process?
Co-chair Connie. Oh, were you just waiting to say yes, yes? Okay, I see lots of yes, yes, yes. Okay. So this is highlighted and we can move on to the next one. Is that okay?
Practices to consider from other
Look.
jurisdictions.
Sorry to interrupt. That is the end of this document. And the subcommittee actually already went through the practices to consider from other jurisdictions document. So there are two parts left, and the next one is up higher, which is the barriers to police accountability, and it also includes a best practices section. So
Okay, so we're on to barriers to police accountability in Portland's system, and the lack of transparency. The system lacks transparency for complainants. There is little information available for complainants to understand how the system works and how to know where their complaint status is in the process. Further, full and necessary transparency for the community accountability does not exist. 1, community members have difficulty understanding the administrative complaint process and receive little or no support from the current system. This section contains information on intake investigation. So I guess we should acknowledge that that's something that should be carried over. Okay.
I see. Maybe it's
2, the important parts of the accountability process are inaccessible to the public. This section contains information on investigation, public nature of meetings, law and policy, reporting on administrative outcomes, reporting of criminal outcomes. So yeah, let's acknowledge that we want this to be carried over into our recommendation.
I see one set of fingers waving. Okay, yep.
Okay, Debbie, I'll pass it over to you for the next one.
So I haven't looked at this full report. This has these parentheses with these things about section contains information. So this then barriers then has a lot more stuff written that relates to these big points. Is that what that means, staff?
Believe so. That
You don't have it memorized either, huh? Okay.
This one, yeah, this one, I have the full version if it's helpful to show at any point. And so, yeah, there's a lot more.
Okay.
This is a sub note here, and you'll see that the purple is again the relevant portions that staff identified for reporting and transparency.
Okay, so if people, as we're going on to the next stage of this, our job, if people want to go back and look at the full text, it's available on the website. So just good to know. Okay, and then I can read the next section.
So
Okay, so let's see, we're on perception and trust. There is a current perception by both community members and law enforcement that the accountability system's opaque, unfair, and unjust. And so, okay, so this obviously is a concern. And I mean, this is all negative stuff we're reading. So I guess then if we're highlighting, it means that we want to be able to address it in our recommendation for areas of agreement. Does that make sense, everybody?
I see lots of
Okay.
nodding heads and thumbs up.
Good. Okay, so just turning it over to, oh, now we're to best practice. Oh, that's part of it. Okay, go ahead, co-chair.
Best practices in Portland system, transparency. There are elements of the current system that prioritize transparency. First, the current system holds public meetings. Meetings of the CRC are open to the public and offer time for public comment. Additionally, CRC appeal hearings are done in public and allow for the community input. The current system publishes data and regular reports, even if imperfect. So I think, yeah, I mean, this is, it's the attempt in transparency. We can certainly carry over the things that are working and then, also bolster those things.
I think is everybody in agreement for this being highlighted? I assume so. Thank you. Just want to make sure I'm getting everybody's heads. Okay, I think we can move on to the next section.
So that's actually the
That's
end
it?
of this document. I mean, there are specifics that were in these parts that are referenced in the paragraph. So for example, it says this section contains information on why, and if in the full document under number 8, sorry, lost it for a second there. There is more detail. So there's the yellow highlights were things that are kind of across multiple sections, subcommittees, phases of work. And the purple is directly related here. So these particular parts are not necessarily referenced in the document that we were just looking at. This one with the highlights, the sort of light purple. This document is the areas of agreement that the commission has already approved on barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland, and it does have more, but there aren't a high number of discrete sections which relate to that. There are 4, and the subcommittee has already talked about them. They're number 1, number 2, number 8, and then under best practices, transparency as well. So yeah. There is this as well, which we identified on staff that's not in the document that may be worth looking at. It's under effectiveness and sort of the nexus between transparency and effectiveness.
Should I do this one? I've lost track of whose turn it is, Co-Chair Connie. You want me to do this?
I actually, if
good.
if the commission permits me, I was going to actually suggest a break, and then we can kind of restart who's going first. Give your guys' brains and eyes a moment to rest. You've done so much already. We could do 10 minutes, so you'd be back at 8:02. Does that sound good? Okay, thank you. Just want to. Hello, everyone. Okay. So I believe we're not quite at general, public comment yet. We'll continue discussing the content which members would like to include in the draft areas of agreement and on reporting and transparency, which is the document the subcommittee will be developing and refer to the full commission. So yes, go ahead, Commissioner Iona.
I was just going to say that since we're mostly done with that other document as far as reviewing it and highlighting the things that we care about, and after we look at this, I'm assuming we'll still have some time left, and I was thinking we could also look at those pages I copied out of the NAPOL report and the information that Commissioner Faith submitted. So if time, I just was thinking we want to obviously use all of our time tonight and get through as much as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Iona. Staff?
Yeah, there is one other thing in the document we haven't gotten to yet as well. It's short at the end. This is back to the previously approved PAC areas of agreement on barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland. And, you know, staff identified 2 things under effectiveness, this purple area up in the intro paragraph, and then we could scroll down to number 13 after that. So just 2 parts left.
Thank you.
How about if I read that one? By design, the lack of transparency bleeds into the inability to monitor for effectiveness, improvement, or challenges. The data that are available are limited and do not summarize the impact made to accountability. Since it's one little sentence, I'll say that one too. Additionally, the public is not aware of when complainants are notified.
So any agreement? Do we have agreement about these? These are items that you'll be discussing further as a commission. Okay, I see fingers waving. Yes, 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 yes. Finger snapping, fabulous. Okay, I guess we'll go on to the next document. If there isn't any other questions or comments. I know there might have been a couple from last meeting that we might wanted to go into, but I wasn't sure if this was the time for that as well. So I know that there was a question about a couple of things, but we'll do this here first.
Okay, are we ready? Is this the part?
Yes, it looks like it is.
Okay. Reports should include information about the allegations made in cases turned over to supervisors for informal resolution. Additionally, publish.
I see
Publish.
Mhm.
Oh.
Go ahead, Miss.
Oh, okay. You want me to keep going? Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Publish an annual report that includes information on the outcomes of complaints, provides clear information, and looks at trends. And reports should also include cases in which the final discipline imposed deviates from the board's original proposed discipline or when discipline falls outside of the corrective action guide. PBR code 3.20.04H4.
Thank you, Co-Chair Connie. I began to see, yeah, go ahead, staff.
Yeah, so this, although there is some specificity in it, this is already in city code. And this is identified by the officer accountability subcommittee in the last phase of work as they were going through it, most of it related to what they were working on, but they flagged some of this for this eventual exercise, and eventually the subcommittee. Yeah.
Thank you, staff.
Or at least conceptually it's in city code. I don't know if it's in, this doesn't appear to be the exact text.
Co-Chair Iona.
Yeah, it seems like we should make note of these to inform what what we want to say about our annual report and what belongs in them. So I would suggest highlighting these.
Okay. I think we can go on to the next documents then. Do you have a preference, co-chairs, or which? Oh, are we doing this first? All this? I just want to make sure.
No, sorry, this is just the exact text.
Okay.
So you can see, this is what the exact text of the current code says.
Thank you, staff.
And you can see also that the earlier parts of the other list are down here 9. So no need to review this specifically, and you already mentioned it, but figure show the actual text as well.
Thank you, staff. Okay, I believe this is the next document that the commission will be going through or discussing. So again, we just ask that you follow normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated, and remember we're using a weighted stack. Finally, be forward thinking in your comments, and I will ask, I believe, co-chair Debbie to frame this one. I believe this is the document that you were referencing.
So, yeah, this is the book by Nate Cole and the Department of Justice. And I said, I encourage, if you have time to take a look at it. It's just really, I think it seems very well organized to me and pretty easy, very approachable. But then they had these sections on public reporting and transparency. So it was easy to find. So so they obviously talk about public reporting and transparency in this section 8, I think that says. And so then they talk about the importance, but then they talk about issuing regular public reports is critical to an agency's credibility. Public reports should in no way be censored or modified by law enforcement or political stakeholders. Such a practice may undermine public confidence in the agency's independence and ability to meaningfully address matters of interest to the community. So, I mean, this kind of just reinforces the whole idea of regular public reporting. So,
would you like that? Oh, sorry, Commissioner.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know. I feel like it's been highlighted elsewhere, but maybe it wouldn't hurt to highlight it again here. So we make sure to get it in there. Although at that point about should not be censored or modified by law enforcement or political stakeholders, it's kind of an important point that I didn't highlight when I did it, but yeah. And then this is the thing I was telling you about, how it talks about they have a minimum here. Civilian oversight agencies should at a minimum issue 1 written report to the public each year. Reports should be written in an accessible manner that allows the public to clearly understand the agency's authority, purpose, procedures, and accomplishments. In addition, they should include as much information related to the agency's mandate and operations as can be disclosed by law, including patterns and trends and complaints or discipline, the agency's recommendations and activities for the year, and issues that may be of concern to the public. Sufficiently resourced oversight agencies should seek to produce more frequent reports, and where appropriate, issue special reports on specific matters, such as the findings of a particular policy review, audit, or investigation. That to me seems like a really important point, because they're talking about, set a minimum, but better, a really effective agency does more. And then also that reports aren't just about, what they've done that year, but they also have reports about special issues, policy reviews, those kinds of things where they, and the IPR does that now. They pick specific topics and do a report, as does the Citizen Review Committee. So they also do them. So this is not unheard of, but it's good to we should really make sure to, I think, to include that in our plan.
Is this I was gonna say, is the commission in agreement with this statement? Okay, good.
Co-Chair Connie, you want to do the kind of take over now for a bit? So
Sure. Are you just wanting me to read the highlighted areas?
I
Or
mean, you kind of take, I mean, when I was highlighting, I just sort of really picked the really important parts that you might want to kind of go a little bit around it, because if you see anything that looks like it's important too.
okay, so you want me to read the whole thing or just the highlighted areas?
I say you might want to go a little beyond the highlighted areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So regular reports, reporting and transparency, regular reports. The recommendation is that the oversight agency should issue regular reports to the public describing the agency's mission, authority, activity, and accomplishments for the reporting period. Yes, carry over.
All right,
Comment.
Yep. So I guess highlight that. Thank you, staff.
Commentary. Public reporting is an essential function to contributing to civilian oversight. Its goal of making both its own operations and those of the overseen law enforcement agency transparent. For most interested parties, as civilian oversight agencies, public reports are the primary source of information about the operations and public interactions of their local law enforcement agency. To keep a public apprised of its work, an oversight agency should issue a public report at least annually or at more regular intervals. So it's kind of a redundancy of like how often it should be reporting. I think we've all agreed that that should be carried over. Okay.
Yep.
Each regular report should state that the oversight agency's mission, authority, and purpose. So it's kind of a repeat of the first sentence. The report should be logically divided into several sections corresponding to the various activities the agency performs and types of information it would like to report to the public. A report should be written in terms accessible to the general public, but not at the expense of omitting important details. Lengthy reports should be summarized with key information in an executive summary, and similarly, technical appendices should be used when appropriate. So now we're kind of getting into how the report should look. Is this, do we want to take lead from this and carry it over? Yes, okay.
Are there any other suggestions that might be in the backs of people's minds? Just kind of putting that out there also. Commissioner, Co-Chair Connie, how do I say Connie? Sorry. Debbie.
Yeah, it's okay. So I was thinking it might be a good idea to highlight the thing about, I mean, I think we hope they'll do lengthy reports because they want detail in them, but it's also nice when they produce an executive summary so that people who only have, 20 minutes can get the highlights in something, short, and then the people who really are gung ho for more information can read the whole thing.
Commissioner, Co-Chair Debbie, would you like that to be a note also of wanting both in terms of like the lengthy and the
Get full report and executive summary? Yeah, it seems like that's a good practice.
Should I keep going?
Sure.
Okay, reports should be used as an opportunity to explain in clear language. Sorry, I can't read when it's scrolling. Processes, procedures, and definitions relevant to the agency's work, such as how complaints are processed and adjudicated, or how the agency monitors department investigations. Additional information such as commendations and a
Mm-hmm.
summary of outreach efforts should be included in the report as well. Reporting on recommendations issued can be an effective means of demonstrating an oversight agency's efforts to promote change within the law enforcement agency. If an agency issues disciplinary recommendations, aggregate data concerning the sustained allegations, recommended discipline, and if permitted by law, discipline enacted by the law enforcement agency should be reported. If an oversight agency has issued policy recommendations throughout the reporting period, regular reports should include summaries of each recommendation, references to additional information concerning the recommendation, such as special reports issued on the subject and the recommended status. So we're very much getting into the minutia of like what the report should contain.
Does this look good to the commission? Oh, co-chair Debbie.
I was thinking that, I mean, to build on the work that Commissioner Faith did, it might be good to go back during our interim and just pick out each, pick out the individual things that are listed in some of this so that we have a whole list of the possible contents of an annual report. And then we can decide if we want to remove any, but what we decide needs to go in the code.
Thank you, Commissioner Debbie. Commissioner Faith?
Yeah, I want to just be mindful. I think we got into this a little bit in the last phase of work of prescribing the right level of detail for the new board versus giving them a really long list of like, here are all the graphs and charts and headings that we expect to see in an annual report. I'd like to feel like the new oversight board has some ability to direct that work as needed. So I'm just mindful of, I'm sorry, I guess I'm giving Debbie and Connie, I know that you'll be kind of working on a draft of being considerate of what the right level of detail that we're requesting versus the oversight board having some decision-making on what they report.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Any other comments or additions or notes that need to be added to this section? Staff?
Yeah, just one quick note. This has been something that has been the phrasing in the city code as well as in this document. There's a few like phrases like if permitted by law to kind of address the possibility that some of this may be restricted in the future, but to indicate the default level of disclosure, and just something to flag as you're reading it to kind of consider another way to achieve something that you've done in previous phases, which is to establish a maximum level, but also have whatever the fallback may be. Just noting it here and in the city code previously shown right before this.
Thank you, staff. Commissioner Connie, are you gonna-
Chair Connie, if you want, I can start reading and give you a break if you're ready.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I think we're at this data and infographics. Data and infographics describing caseload, complaint allegations and dispositions, officer and complainant demographics, and complaint geographies help the public understand the nature of the agency's work, including comparative data from prior years for certain measurements is useful in showing trends and activity over time. While the data should be accompanied by basic explanations concerning their measurement, caution must be exerted when making causal inferences regarding changes in data. And a lot of this, I know, in the earlier IPR reports that were really comprehensive, they you know, they had a lot of, like, they had the demographics of the people who complain. And so, you know, that was always kind of interesting to see, and all sorts of other things. But that was, I just, when I noticed that, I remember when they used to do that. And I think they started, and I don't know if they put it in their reports or they have this dashboard that shows what parts of the city the complaints are coming from, which is sort of a, you know, also an interesting thing to see. But yeah, so this is, some of this is like, has been done or is being done in Portland already. Okay, so do people want to carry over this thing about just to keep this on the chart of possibilities of things that they could even if it's not in the code, could be included in some advice in our final report of things that they should be considering as a board and agency once they start working.
I see a nod of hands and waves of fingers. Yeah. The CMOB. You're good. Okay. Just want to make sure. I saw everybody except for you. So.
Okay, next, special reports, recommendation, investigations, and reviews of matter of significant community interest should be published in standalone special reports. And then let me see if there's anything. Well, when an oversight agency performs an in-depth investigation or review of policies and procedures, critical incidents, or other matters of significant community concern, the agency's findings should be published in a special report separate from the agency's regular and routine reports. Special reports can extend to the oversights public reach by can extend the oversights public reach by drawing attention to the agency's response to a specific matter that is of community concern. By addressing issues and practices of the law enforcement agency that are of significant concern to the community, special reports can build the relationship between the oversight agency and the public. Highlighting recommendations for remedial initiatives in a special report may lead the public to more closely monitor subsequent implementation. So our people want to capture the idea of special reports for special circumstances.
I see some waving of fingers. Okay, I think we have consensus here.
Okay, Connie, you want to take over again?
Sure. Publishing and presenting data, or yeah, okay, that's where we are, right? I'll give
Yes.
Samir a moment to catch up. Looks like he's still typing.
Yep.
Publishing and presenting data. Recommendation. An oversight agency's data should be regularly published and presented in clear and accessible format. So again, this kind of keeps coming up. It's a bit redundant. Data on complaints, complainant, alleged victim, and officer demographics, allegations, dispositions, and complaint geographies is among the most vital forms of information an oversight agency has at its disposal. Visualizing these data can have a strong impact on the public's understanding of patterns and trends in complaint activity and investigations. I don't know about publishing the victims' information. That might be too much transparency.
I see some nods.
But isn't that, it says demographics, so I don't think they mean their name, do you?
Okay,
Yeah, so like they're, 52 years old,
right.
yeah, right.
Potentially their gender or
Yeah, that kind of thing, right? Their ethnicity, all that. So you kind of get a profile of, who's, who is it, who's involved in using the system.
Commissioner CMOB, I saw your hand raised. Did you want
No,
to at all?
I'm good.
Oh, good. I just wanted to hear your voice. That was all.
Yeah.
Talk
to us. Talk to us.
Yeah. I mean, if there is further discussion needed for this particular area, I would definitely encourage it, just because it is important.
I mean, I guess it does kind of, I think, beg the question of like how detailed we should be making of a recommendation, if we should be recommending what it should be published. Or will the actually, you know, sort of elected like officials will make those like that actual decision.
Commissioner Seemob.
Just a visioning process in my head is that this makes for a good dashboard. The suggestion. Like an IPR board dashboard. Be great.
Co-chair Iona.
And one thing we could do for homework is, I mean, in the, somewhere in the, I think the stuff from other jurisdictions there, there's a list of several, and it may be also be in Commissioner Faith's hint that the report that she did, there was a list of agencies that have, do have it spelled out in their code, what goes in their annual report. So it would be interesting to see how they describe it in, yeah, right here, how they describe it in their, in some of these, the codes for these different cities. So, and actually look at the code and see what, you know, see what it says. And then we can decide, then that might help us decide how much detail we think we want to recommend that goes in the code for this.
Thank you, Commissioner Co-Chair Iona. And if everyone is done reading this area and if there's consensus on what has been highlighted and note the notes, we can move on to the next section. I believe Commissioner Connie, that was
Okay.
your turn to go.
Raw data can be downloaded, inspected, and analyzed by members of the public. Publishing raw data on a regular basis promotes transparency and public confidence in both the law enforcement and civilian oversight agencies. If feasible, interactive dashboards can be developed around the data so that it can be visualized in different ways. There you go, CMOB. In Portland, Oregon, Independent Police Review, IPR, publishes several years of data on its website. This includes complaints, intake decisions, closure reasons, complainant demographics, and complaint geographies. The IPR website allows members of the public to download the raw data and includes an appendix describing data sources.
So how do people feel about having raw data available and also following up on Commissioner Seemob's preference for having a dashboard as well?
I see lots of consensus, including Commissioner Seemob.
And so I kind of think this is the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, okay.
I believe I have one more document. Is that correct?
I think, yeah, we have what the Commissioner Faith's, the information she pulled together. Commissioner Faith, would you like to be the one that goes through this, or would you like Co-Chair Connie and me to do it?
I'm happy to do it. Give you all a little break.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And we definitely have covered some of these things. So these are from our own document, practices to consider from other jurisdictions. I highlighted in Seattle, the required contents of agency and commission annual reports are defined in code. In San Francisco, the annual report includes cases, allegations, demographics, disaggregated by geographical area or district, as well as policy recommendations and their status, and a summary of outreach. And in San Diego, the annual report includes board activities, recommendations / outcomes, trends, board missions, staff members' biographies, messages from the chair and executive director, complaints by year, quarter, allegations by unit, type and agency, lists, board actions by case number, date and findings, lists, death cases.
Any comments or questions or about this particular section, agreements? Okay, so Commissioner Connie's agreement, Commissioner Iona?
So I was thinking, yeah, I think we should, make note of this to refer to as we come up with our list of contents of reports that we would want to include in our either in the code recommendation or in extra advice to the new agency.
Mm-hmm. I like that they specified board actions by case number. I think that will be really helpful for people who are closely following along what's happening to individual cases. I think that's the first place I've seen that recommended amongst the documents we've talked about.
Thank you, Commissioner Inkin. Commissioner Iona?
I also like that they have the board members' biographies and that in the San Diego one. I know IPR used to in their annual report would have a kind of a little profile on the Citizen Review Committee. They even had a photograph of all of them together. And it was kind of nice to be able to see who was representing the public on the Citizen Review Committee and read a little bit about them and what they did. What they'd accomplished that year, what kind of outreach they did, what kind, if they did any reports or anything. And so that's something that would be good. I think I'm glad that this is sort of mentioned in here so we can take some inspiration from that when we think of our list.
Thank you, Commissioner Iona. Any other comments or thoughts about this section? Okay. Let's move on to the next.
I didn't highlight any of this area. I thought they were important to note, but I found them contained in other areas. So if it's okay with folks, I'd love to move down to the next section.
Looks like there's consensus on that.
Cool. So I read this out earlier. Shall I read it again?
For the members of the public, redundancy is okay, just because sometimes people miss out. But I see Commissioner Iona, they have their hand up.
I was just going to say, I think we better make sure to highlight what in here we find particularly compelling so we don't, overlook it. So, we could read it to ourselves and speak up or as Ayumide said, it probably does. Let's see, how's our time looking? There's probably time to actually read it out loud.
I love reading, so why not? Let's go for it.
Thank you.
So I pulled these from the 2021 annual report. Section A, about the office, which includes authority and function of the office, vision, mission, and values, overview of the accountability system, city oversight, staff and organizational structure, training, and professional development. And I think this is actually maybe the first place we've kind of mentioned this level of detail around like what the staffing and the function of the body are. So that would be my recommendation, is highlighting this portion. Complaints. Summary of contact received, complaints and cases, demographics, employees named in complaints, location of incidents, allegations, and classification. I think we've covered that pretty sufficiently. Investigations. Oh, I see you.
Commissioners, staff.
Yeah, just a quick note. This is the first place where it said that the geography is based off of the location of the incidents as opposed to the location of the complainants. Which is just maybe too granular to get into, but if for anyone who had the same thought I did as you're listening, that incidents can occur in different places than maybe where the folks live, and those graphs might be tell a different story. Something to highlight.
Thank you, staff.
I like that. I don't think we've specified yet in other places that we're talking about where the incident occurred.
How does the rest of the commission feel about that statement being included or flagged? Okay, it seems like everyone's in consensus with that. Thank you, staff, for that suggestion.
Okay, investigations, expedited and full investigations, timeliness, findings, overturned findings. You think that we covered this in other sections? Maybe not the timeliness.
I know, I was gonna say, I don't remember timeliness.
Yeah. And then discipline imposed and appeals, policy and programs, policy review, mediations, and manual updates. And then finally, other functions, community engagement with Seattle PD, and bias reviews.
Any highlights for E or F? Commissioner Iona?
This may have come up before, but I don't remember. Do you remember? I remember seeing mediation, reporting on mediations. And then I don't know if I saw anything about bias reviews anyplace else, so those might be worth highlighting so we don't forget them.
Commissioner Krista?
Thanks. Has community engagement come up anywhere? Reports on community engagement? I don't think it's been mentioned other places. I'm not sure if I'm misremembering that. And actually engagement with the police department as well. I don't know if that's come up either. I can't remember.
Okay, and then final from our bestie Eileen Luna Firebaugh. The director shall work with the committee to develop quarterly blah 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 and annual. We've already done that. Plus, this report may include analysis of closed files which were not appealed, but is not the intent that the files be reopened. I highlighted that because I couldn't remember if we included that anywhere either.
Commissioner Iona?
I think to be on the safe side, we should highlight it, even if it's a repeat, because that's something that the CRC has the authority to do, is review closed cases, because sometimes there's things to be learned from them. Even the point isn't to reopen it, but to learn from it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I believe that's staff is taking those.
Yeah, that is the end of this document. So just before moving on, I think actually it makes sense to do public comment is next on the list, and then we go to to next steps. So if we can, I'll stop screen sharing. If we can get the slide back up for public comment, please. Great, thank you very much. So the commission is now, or the subcommittee is now going to take public comment on the issues that the subcommittee is discussing, or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 2 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you'd like to speak. If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. Start by recognizing Dan Handel.
Oh, good evening, fellow commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the commission and also a member of Portland Cop Watch. So I'm glad that the question came up about whether or not to defer to the board. I really can't emphasize enough. You don't know at this point, or we collectively don't know at this point, what is going to end up in the code and what's not going to end up in the code. And I think if it's important to people on the commission, it should be written down and passed on to help guide the new board, because we spent all this time trying to decide what's important or not. So I'm glad that you're going to be able to basically suggest everything. There's some things that got unhighlighted from the document that Commissioner Aiken made, like one about reporting on deaths, and I didn't see that anywhere else. And I don't know, I mean, my work, whatever process for the officer accountability thing was, even if we had a duplicate, you know, you can come when you're consolidating it, you can cut out the duplicates, but if you didn't highlight it at all, it'll fall off. So you might want to double check on things like that got unhighlighted tonight. You know, the other thing about our making recommendations to the city council about what should go into the code is that, you know, it's one thing when we're just ordinary gadflies, community members sitting there at public testimony, but we are the commission that got appointed to make these recommendations. So I think that our word carries a little bit more than just you know, kind of random thoughts that get thrown at them all the time. The IPR's dashboards I find terrible and hard to follow. They used to put data like that in the text of the report, so you could actually, they'd say, oh, this is how many cases were sustained or, you know, not sustained or unfounded, and you could read it. Then they pushed them off the appendix, so I had to flip back and forth, and then they just stopped publishing them because they said you could look at it in the dashboard. And I hope it's that whatever it was written on paper is clear to the community. The issue about the sustain rate, I don't know if you understood the significance of that, but, you know, basically you can say the sustain rate is 10% if you only count the number of cases that got investigated, but then there are a whole bunch of people who walked away dissatisfied who aren't included. So if it's like 10 out of 100 cases, but if 400 cases came in and they dismissed 300, you don't want to say 10% of the cases were sustained. You understand that? So that's why that, I think, Lailene Firebar was pointing that part out. And I have some comments about the accessibility of this webinar format. It's very difficult to follow some of it, like Commissioner Hussaini wouldn't even have a square on the screen until his camera came on. I cannot copy and paste out of the chat or download the chat. And so that's very frustrating. And there was one more term that was written about the way that the report should be written, and I thought this is something that some of the commissioners might appreciate, which should be accessible, like written in ordinary language so that the community can understand it. So those are my comments. Thank you for all your good work.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan, and you actually hit 3 minutes on the dot on that. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? And then I'll pass back to facilitator Amy Dan.
I didn't see any other members of the public, but I see that Commissioner Faith has something to say.
I just wanted to respond real quick. Thanks for bringing that up, Dan. As an analyst, it's always helpful to hear when dashboards aren't working. And one thing that came to my mind around that, which I don't know that we've talked about, is the accessibility of the reports and also the usability of the data and findings. So I think one of the things that I would like to recommend that we haven't put anywhere is some technical assistance provided by staff or the board to interpret the dashboards. That's something that I do in my job, is like hold a webinar to explain what the graphs mean and what all the words mean. So, oh, yes, thank you, Samir. So if there's an opportunity for us to just clarify that the board could provide technical assistance to the community to understand what the data mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Any other possible comments, questions, thoughts that might have popped into your mind during the Q&A or question and answer period, or the public comment, or just in general in reading this document or going through the full spectrum of documents? Okay. Well, guess we'll move on to next steps. And I'll pass it over to staff.
Yeah, thank you. So the next meeting of this subcommittee is going to be this is the second meeting. The next will be third. There'll be 4 total, possibly with an additional opportunity for a 5th if needed. This is the largest gap between them. There's a week between the first 2. It's a week between the 3rd and the 4th. There's 10 days between this meeting and the following meeting on next Thursday, March 16th. And so during that time, in order to try and achieve the timelines of this phase of work, and by virtue of that, the timelines of the commission, the goal is to have a draft document ready to go before, even if it's sort of cobbled together section by section, entering the March 16th meeting. And so co-chairs will be able to help kind of collate that and get that together. But as part of that process, it may be helpful to divide that up to some degree. And so co-chairs and staff discussed asking here at this stage, maybe what sections may be helpful to look at, and if there are members of the subcommittee that are interested and able to focus on one or more of those sections. So while co-chairs may have thoughts on this too, just wanted to lead off by noting that there have been a couple different things that have been mentioned in the meeting today. The agenda and scope document splits it up in terms of reports to council and also in terms of reports to the public. And there has also been, within the context of the public data, the reporting and aggregation, as well as the raw data. And early in the last meeting, there was also a point that was raised about the information that the commission receives that, this relates to raw data, that it may be that the oversight board receives, that the oversight board may be a conduit to the public for. So you can see this highlighted portion here, raw data that the public should have access to this information too. So I'm not sure if there's anything co-chairs wanted to say in terms of how to split this up, or if members wanted to volunteer to put some text together based off of the highlighted, the things that you have highlighted in these 2 meetings. Co-chairs, Debbie or Connie?
Please raise your hand for some work.
I see Commissioner sorry, forgive me, Commissioner.
Co-chair, no more.
No more co-chair. Yes.
No more.
No more.
Yeah, I'm happy to help draft. I want to let everyone know that I'm going to be on vacation for 2 weeks where I will not be checking email. So that's why I am volunteering to help front load. So I think a couple of areas where I'd be happy to draft are around accessibility. And I'm happy to take what reports are public. So I'm looking at section F I and section EJ, EI. And then I can write a little transparency section. Want it by Monday night. I can do that.
Commissioner Iona.
So Commissioner Faith, did you say by Monday, you mean a week from now? When you said by
Yeah, I
Monday?
can.
Okay, good. The other thing I was thinking is, it might help, I mean, if people don't mind, I don't know if this will be annoying, but if you do like kind of get a start and have something, even though it's not fully done, to share, it's okay to share it with the group, is that right? I forget what the rules are. I just think, so we don't end up accidentally, doing the same thing, 3 people. So that way we'll see what, if you make some headway on, say, Wednesday, and you share with us your progress, then we'll know not to duplicate that work. If that works for people, I would kind of like to keep track of where things are going, and maybe just send it to co-chair Connie and me, so we make sure that we're not having everybody do everything 3 times.
Anyone else? Commissioner Christian.
Thanks. I can go through what's highlighted and pull out what information might be in the reports, if that's helpful. I'll give a heads up. I probably won't be able to do that until closer to the weekend though. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to do the like mid-share week thing. I probably wouldn't be able to, throw it out there until like Friday, Saturday-ish, maybe Thursday, if it's a good week.
I think that's okay. Thank you for volunteering.
Sorry, sorry to jump back in. I just to clarify this, the document will probably be emailed to us after this meeting, I'm guessing, with the updated highlights.
Yeah, so all of these documents will be emailed, and then there's going to be a collected outline that might be a little bit easier to look at in a couple days.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner McDowell.
Yeah, I can do, so what meetings are open to the public piece. And I guess what I propose to do is go back through the documents from the last stage, which would address the officer accountability model, as well as kind of board oversight, and just see, I think, I know in the officer accountability area, we did try to address what was open, what was not. And so I can go back through and try to collect that information and see what recommendations we've already made. But I mean, I think that the idea will be that pretty much all of the processes and meetings should be open to the public, and then just trying to figure out where we've noted potential exceptions, try to collect those. Does that seem right to people? I just want to say that's what I would plan to do to do that. I don't know that there's so much that we've talked about here in these documents relating to the meetings being open. Okay, that's what I'll do then.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McDowell. So I guess the areas that are still needed are raw data, and dashboards. What are exceptions to community members' information, and what exceptions are to the community members' information being published? Those are the 3 areas that are left. Okay, Commissioner Aiken also said that they could do raw data and dashboards. Thank you so much. So we'll go to the garden plot. Does any, this is a time for facilitators, co-chairs, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today and didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here, use them for developing future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items to were not previously mentioned, or to discuss any items, but we will use this to develop future agendas so items can be addressed. I just want to check in with our second facilitator first. Did you catch anything that needed to be added to the garden plot?
No, I did not.
Thank
We
you.
covered it. Thanks.
Staff.
Nothing here, thank you.
Okay, and I did not as well at this point. So co-chairs, I just wanted to check in with co-chairs. No? Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much. Let's see. And I believe we are getting to our lovely closing. The Police Accountability Commission now accepts advanced public comment in 3 ways. Online web form, community members can send public comments to the to the Police Accountability Commission or specific subcommittees at tinyurl.com/Portland PAC comments. You can also do it through voicemail. Community members can leave a voicemail at 503-823-3346, which will be transcribed and, if necessary, translated before circulating to PAC members. And the third is postal mail. Mail can be sent to PO Box. Mail sent to the new PO Box will be transcribed and, if necessary, translated. You can send that to Police Accountability Commission, City of Portland, Community Safety Division, PO Box 906, Portland, Oregon 97207. Public comment received by Tuesday at 8 a.m. is circulated in advance of the Thursday PAC meeting. Public comment received by Friday at 8 a.m. is circulated in advance of the following Monday PAC meeting. As a reminder, we want to thank all the members who attended today for their contributions. Thank the interpreters. Finally, thank you to the members of our community for attending and contributing your thoughts and questions. If you have not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting of the subcommittee of reporting and transparency is March 16th. It is now 9:00 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.